Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Iron Anchor Cycles. Well, we are back with the purple, although I guess it's not so purple anymore, 2002 Lowrider up here on the bench, and we're gonna make some big progress on it today. So I know the last video that we did on this bike was only about 10 minutes long. We did the Dyna oil pan mod on it. If you missed that video, I'll leave a link up here to the playlist. You can get caught up and see what we've done so far on this. But like I said, today we're gonna start to make some big progress on this. So I've got a big pile of parts over here on this other table, and here, I'll cut to a shot of that for you guys so you can see what we've got here, but it's a bunch. We've got engine mounts, crash bar, some chrome parts, a whole bunch of Thrashin control stuff, chain conversion stuff, carburetor, brake parts, air cleaners, you name it, we've got it. We've got a lot to do on here. So the plan today is we're gonna tackle one big chunk of this. And so where I wanna go is we are gonna start doing what we gotta do here on the front end. So today's video is gonna be about getting the bars, risers, controls, and front end dialed in. So we're gonna get started, I think, with doing some tear down here. We'll show you guys that. Part of what this is gonna be doing the front end. I'll show you a part here. We've got a replacement lower leg, which is obviously, if you can see here, a dual disc lower that we're gonna replace the right side leg with so we can run dual disc front brakes. So I don't think we're gonna show too much content in terms of the disassembly and reassembly of the fork legs. We're gonna rebuild both of them, new seals, fluid, all that. I'll kind of show you little bits and pieces of it, but we just did a video, the last one we did actually, on another Dyna, doing a front end. So I think we'll skip a lot of that just so we can get to the good stuff of getting this put back together. So one of the things that I think is gonna be pretty cool on this is we are gonna eliminate maybe all, or certainly as much as possible, of the wiring up here and get this as clean as we can possibly get it and as simple as we can possibly get it. So I think that's gonna be cool. So I think the unique thing for this video is gonna be, you know, kind of a no controls or no electronics front end, and, you know, getting it all dialed in with some cool parts. We've got pretty cool clutch setup to go on there. We've definitely got a cool brake setup to go on there between some new calipers, a pretty cool master cylinder that's different from factory. So, but anyway, you'll see all that when we do it. So I think I will not give you guys any more of me jabbering away, and we'll just get to it. So I think let's cut to getting this thing taken apart, and then we'll jump in. All right, so just like that, with a little bit of disassembly, we've got the front end stripped off the bike. Now, one of the things I mentioned, if you saw our last video where we ran into messed up neck bearings, this is just one of those things where people tend to overlook them. If you notice, the front end on this bike, the lowers were already chromed, so somebody's already been this far, and maybe these bearings were looked at some point. Usually people don't, but we're certainly gonna check them. So I can kind of tell just right off the bat by the way this is moving, it's sticky. It's not nearly as bad as that orange Dyna we did a couple weeks ago, but I'm guessing that these are gonna have to be replaced. I don't know, and we're just gonna look and find out, but because we literally just did this in that last video, I'm not gonna show this. I'm gonna let Chris work on this, and I'm gonna go over to the workbench, and I'm gonna do the work on the forks. Now, I said we are not going to show that content because we have done it previously. I did decide what I'm gonna do is we're not gonna include it in this video because I don't think it's super relevant for what we're doing, but I am gonna record it, and we'll just make a separate quick little, you know, probably a 10-minute video of just disassembling, cleaning, and rebuilding the forks just so that, you know, content is there in case anyone wants to see it. So that, you know, video will come out, I don't know, maybe before this one, maybe after this one, but we'll just record it and we'll just put it away for another video to post at some point. So that is what's gonna be happening. So Chris will work on this. We'll let you know what happens. We're not gonna show this whole process, but I'll come back and kind of show you what we find. So I'm gonna work on the forks. Chris is gonna work on the steering head, and then we'll meet back in the middle and we'll get going with getting some new parts on here and start to get this thing looking right. So stick around. All right, well, I'm back and we're ready to get the rebuilt fork legs with a new dual disc lower on the right side put in place. We did take a look at these, and as I mentioned, I told you I'd tell you what we found. We decided to go ahead and replace them. There was a little bit of wear, bearings were dry, but the races were not terrible. They had some visible wear marks on them, nothing you could feel with your finger. Truth is, it probably would have been fine for quite a while, particularly if we repacked the bearings, but for a $30 bearing kit, it's worth just changing them out as long as we're here. So new bearings, new races, and we will set the fall away and get the preload on these bearings correct once we have it back together. So for now, we're gonna install the two legs, and we're only gonna tighten the bolts on the lower triple tree. We're gonna leave the upper one loose so we can do that adjustment when the time comes. All right, so there's one. The stick out should be 1/2 inch or a little bit less. I do it by eye. You make them the same by measurement, but I just kind of set one and then match the other to it. I said about 1/2 inch. I think 0.52 is pretty close. Not bad for by eye. Let's see what we did on this one. .506, pretty good. So I'll just leave this one set where that one was, and we'll just adjust this one accordingly. So this one has to just come down just the teeniest, tiniest bit. All right, let's try that. All right, with those heights set, we'll go ahead and torque them down. All right, and I got one more step to do, which I have to tighten these fork caps. I didn't do it over at the workbench when I put them back together, but now that they're clamped in place, I'll tighten these caps. Apparently, hand tight is 20 foot-pounds.
Pretty much.
All right, so with our front end reassembled, we can get into the meat of what this project was gonna be about. So, I think our plan from here is we're just gonna throw the temporary front wheel back on, get this thing back supported on 2 wheels, how we like it. And we'll start to get the handlebars mocked up and figure out what we gotta do. Truth is, this is actually pretty easy because when there's no wiring, you're not wiring extensions, you're not doing soldering, you're not doing any of that. This is one of the easier handlebar jobs you can have if you're not running any controls. I'll show you the steps we're taking to eliminate all that, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So for now, we'll get this bike sit back down where it belongs, and we'll start looking at the handlebars. All right, let's get some risers put on here. We've got a set of real nice shiny chrome Thrashin 9.5 inch risers. In this application, we're doing solid aluminum riser bushings. There is definitely a pro and con to that. Definitely more solid, but also, you know, gonna feel some more vibrations in it. For a bike like this that's entirely purpose built, that vibration issue is not an issue. You just want the most solid connection you can get. So solid bushing is the way to go. Throw these bolts in, throw these risers on, and we'll throw some handlebars on here. All right, so I'm just gonna leave those snugged until I put the handlebars in, and then we'll know that these are straight once we get the bars clamped down, and then we'll tighten the bottom, final tighten. That looks All right, so with the bars on, we want to start getting our controls, or the limited amount of controls we're going to have, put on so that we can measure for our upper brake line, our clutch cable, and throttle and idle cables. We'll get those measurements, I'll put that order in, and then we'll keep cranking away. So in order to do that, we've got to get our throttle tube assembly put on, our brake master cylinder put on, and our clutch and clutch perch put on. So we've got all unique stuff for that, so we'll get that stuff bolted up, and we'll see where we're at. Obviously, I think I mentioned this before, normally you would get your wiring done before you have this on the bike and have your stuff to plug in, but because we're not running any electronics up here, there's no wiring to run. So we just can start getting the stuff on to do the lines and cables, and we'll go from there. So I'll let Chris come and put that stuff on. We'll show you guys what it looks like with the mock-up. And then we'll get the lines and cables ordered, and then we'll jump right back into the video when those arrive. So it'll only take a couple days for them to come. So for us, we'll be back in a few days when that comes in after we put that stuff on, but for you guys, it'll be right afterwards. So you'll see the stuff go on, and then we'll get to continuing with the install. All right, so we got our controls mocked up on here. Throttle tube, this is just like raw aluminum deal from Biltwell. We've got a chrome Elite shorty lever here. This is really nice, I like this. And then your quintessential Brembo remote reservoir master cylinder here. These do have a really nice feel. I'm not sure if the look matches this particular bike or not, but I guess we'll have to see once it all goes together, but it's certainly gonna function well. We also have got, I don't know if it's on camera here, maybe a little bit. We've got our dual disc lower brake line assembly on here, so we could measure the brake line from upper to lower, measure our clutch cable, and measure throttle and idle cables. So got all that measured, parts are on the way. I did promise I would show you what I did in terms of eliminating the switch controls here. So let me zoom in and I'll talk about that for a sec. All right, well, first of all, there's a look at the lower brake line assembly. So we're doing Magnum sterling chromite lines for everything on this. I think they look really good, better than just the regular stainless ones do. So this obviously is for dual disc. There's a T here, line on each side, and then the connection up here. Much cleaner than using just a little T down here. The lines are kind of shaped because you got these hard lines here to direct them in the right direction. I like these a lot. But anyway, let's talk about this giant wiring harness. So for all these connections on here, the only one we're still using is this one, which is gonna run up to the tank and connect into the gauges. So after that, well, I was wrong. We were using two. This goes to the headlight. So our headlight wire is gonna plug in here. This is the turn signal plug, not using that. And then you've got your left side and right side switch connectors here. Now, it's not so simple as just disconnect the switches and go on your way. You got two things you gotta do to maintain at least a limited amount of functionality. So the first is, we'll start here because this one's probably the more critical. We need a jumper wire here to jump the kill switch. So basically with this wire connected from this pin to this pin, that kill switch will be in the run position by default. So no switch, just this sets it to run. So as soon as you turn the key switch on, the bike will be ready to start. And then the downside, you just gotta be aware of it, is there's no handlebar kill switch. The only way to stop the bike is to turn the key switch off. So obviously not for everybody. You can comment about how dangerous that is or isn't. It'll be fine. It's not gonna be a big deal on this bike. So that's number one. And then number two is for your headlight. So the way the Harley headlight switch works is there's not an on-off, right? So you think your headlight, you have the high beam on-off switch. Well, it doesn't really work that way. You're sending power through that switch. It's not an on-off switch, it's a two-way switch. So when the switch is set to low, it sends power one way. When the switch is set to high, it sends it another way. So what we've got here is a jumper that's going from the power source, the light circuit, to one or the other. It's either the high or the low beam. I can't remember. Chris asked the customer which he wanted, and he told him, I'm guessing the high beam, but I don't know. So basically what we've got here is the headlight will always be on, and it'll always be in one position, whether it's high or low. So all we did was just you can, reuse the plugs that you've got on the handlebar controls. We opted to use spare ones so we don't molest those handlebar controls. We don't want to be cutting the bike harness. And he's got nice OE Harley chrome switch pods. Those are worth something or could be used for something else. We don't want to be, tearing those apart and make them useless or make somebody have to go figure out how to repin them all. So we just use spare connectors. So we've got this taken care of, this taken care of, and so now we're ready to just pull this whole harness back in, and then we'll plug our headlight in here, keep pulling it in, and plug our gauges in here. So that's really it for the wiring. Obviously, we need to have a start button on here. We won't talk about that now. We'll talk about that when we get to it, but it's a pretty simple old school trick for the start button. So that's something we'll talk about when we get to it, like I said. So I think that's gonna do it for me for today. It's Friday night, it's late, I'm ready to go home. We'll come back when we've got some more parts and we'll keep rocking and rolling. All right, well, the good news is some of our lines and cables came in. Hopefully you can see here, I've got our new clutch cable just kind of stuck into position here. We also got the brake line we needed. Unfortunately, the throttle and idle cables, the ones we wanted, are back ordered. So we're gonna wait a little while, see what happens with those. We can kind of reuse the ones that were on here as a placeholder, so we'll see what we gotta do, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. At the moment, what I wanna do is get this new clutch cable installed. We've also got a bunch of stuff to do over here sort of at the same time as that. So we've got a replacement clutch side cover. I know this one looks really nice. It's not perfect. The chrome's bubbling a little bit, so a customer wanted to put a new one on, so we're able to get one of those. And then we've got a whole bunch of ARP hardware to do over here, and we're gonna do it at the same time. Part of the reason for that is a few of these bolts either cannot be accessed with a clutch cable in place or are much easier to access without it there. So this bolt back here on the transmission bearing housing, this won't come out with the clutch cable in. So we wanna do these while we got the clutch cable out. And then a few others, like this little guy right here, could probably get it out with the clutch cable in place, be easier to do without it, etc. So all this hardware here that hasn't been changed, we're gonna change it now. So I'm gonna start by getting this taken off and get the clutch cable removed, and then we'll keep going. So there shouldn't be much fluid left in here, but you never know. Yeah. So typically you're gonna have, even when you drain the oil pan or the transmission oil, you're gonna have more oil than this come out from what sits in here. But because we had this taken apart for so long, all that residual oil had time to work its way out of here. So that's why we've got only a couple of drips out of there. So anyway, it's good news. All right, so one step I forgot to do is, normally what you wanna do is, while this cover is still on here, just crack this clutch cable loose. I don't know, we'll see if it's, oh no, that wasn't even very tight. So we're not gonna have a problem getting this out, but sometimes this can be on there pretty tight. If you just crack it loose while the cover is still on, it'll hold it for you, but not gonna be a problem for us today. So we'll get this disassembled pretty easy. There's just a big snap ring in here, installed incorrectly, that we're gonna pull out. Okay. Making a mess. All right, can't even see what I'm doing, sorry. Here, let me zoom in a little for you guys. All right, so just took this snap ring out, and now the ball and ramp assembly can come out. So that'll just pop off of there. And a little cable adapter ferrule there. And then bottom ramp assembly with the 3 ball bearings. And now we're free to unscrew the clutch cable from the clutch release cover. So the easiest way, I think, to do this is, rather than try to mess around with this cable and spin it around, is just to spin the cover and hold the cable stationary. All right. There we go. That's free. And now we can take the old cable and pull it out of here. All right, so why I had both cables in at the same time, just a quick note to point that out. One is the routing can sometimes be a little weird. On this bike it's not, but on some bikes it can. And it's sometimes easy to forget how the cable was routed. So if you put the other one in while the old one's still there, you'll make sure to get it exactly the same. And why I had this in already was before I'm gonna go ahead and actually install this, I wanted to put it in place and make sure we got the length correct before we made it a non-returnable item. So the length is good, we verified that, so then I did the assembly, and now we're ready to get the new cover and get this reinstalled. But before we do that, got a whole bunch of hardware to change. So let me get reorganized here and we'll jump into that. All right, so in no particular order here, I'm just gonna go ahead and start swapping hardware. Maybe I'll do a little time lapse for you guys on this so you don't have to watch me just take out and install bolts one after the other. Yo. All right, well, I feel like here's as good a time as any to jump back in. So we got all of our hardware done here and came up to do the bolt for the speed sensor here. And I decided as long as we're here, I might as well pull this out and clean this off. Sometimes these can get pretty dirty. This one is more than a little dirty. And it can cause the speedometer and some other things to start to go a little funky. So not a bad idea to clean it every once in a while. But normally what you see on here is kind of this gray paste, which obviously is metal. You know, it's a gear case. There's gonna be some wear. This is a lot. I mean, all these little shavings on here. The truth is, like, for the most part, they're not exactly shavings, although some of them are. A lot of it is more of like, almost like stalagmites or whatever, just sort of built up because there's obviously a magnet in here, so it's gonna attract steel particles. So for the time being, I'm just gonna go ahead and wipe this off. I actually think this is fine, and this was really just doing its job, honestly. I mean, when we drained the transmission fluid, we didn't see any metal there, so, you know, we'll keep an eye on it. This bike is definitely gonna get abused, and, you know, if things need to be rebuilt down the road, that's what's gonna happen. But for now, we just wanted to put it together as solidly as we can, and, you know, we'll kind of take it from there. So we might be back in this transmission one day, but that day is not gonna be today. So I'm gonna wipe this off and we're gonna carry on. All right, so we got our hardware basically done here. You may have noticed I left one old bolt down here at the bottom. The reason for that is our new exhaust bracket is gonna connect at this location. It's got two locations it's gonna bolt to. One is here and one is here. So there was no bolt here. This is just a little ear. It's got nothing behind it. Down here, I figured why take this bolt out, put another one in so we could take it out to put another one in. So I just left the old one for now, and we'll get that when we get the pipe put on. The next thing we've got to do, I don't know if you noticed, I pulled this chrome cover off of here to give myself a little clearance to get this out. But that actually helps us because we've got another step we've got to do here. If you recall a little earlier in the video, I mentioned we've got to do something about a starter switch. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. But the easiest way, and I think the cleanest way, although there's some kind of cool trick stuff you can do with buttons hidden and whatever, but the cleanest way to do it, easiest way to do it, is to do kind of an old school solenoid mounted starter switch. And it's very simple. Really, you know, the solenoid is a very, very, very simple mechanical device. You make the electrical connection in here, it throws out the Bendix and starts the starter. All that happens, you know, by the internal wiring of all this. and it'll crank the bike. Obviously, it's pretty simple. So they make a bunch of different versions of these in black and chrome and whatever. That's what we decided to put on here. So all we've got to do is take this cover off. My guess is going to be a little stuck, but we'll see. And then we've got, hopefully, the correct solenoid switch to go on there. So let's get that taken off, get it cleaned up, see what we got. All right, so cover pops off. We've got this little plunger assembly deal here. So a little dirty, not the worst thing I've ever seen. We'll get this cleaned up before we reinstall it. I'm not 1000% sure of the specific inner workings of this, but basically what you've got going on inside really any starter solenoid is you are at once connecting the electrical contacts that are going to bring the main battery power from the solenoid to the starter motor, and at the same time, the solenoid is pushing the Bendix into the ring gear on the clutch basket so that when the starter starts to spin, it engages. So obviously by hitting the button that's going to be here now, you're sort of doing a manual override of that where you're pushing that plunger down, you're making that electrical connection and sending the Bendix out. So push that in and it'll crank. Seems pretty straightforward to me. So definitely a lot shinier on the copper contacts here than it was before. Hopefully you can see here what's happening too. So you've got a big power lug on one side of the solenoid here, and then you got another one here. This one is going to be the incoming hot power from the battery going into the top here. Then this one is going into the starter. And obviously there's a connection that's going to get made between these two. You got some other smaller things going on here. This is the switch for the actual trigger switch. So you got some wires there. It's not too complicated. I think it makes sense. But hopefully you can see that you got this big copper washer on here. When you push this down, it's going to connect from here to here. So this does have some wear on it, but I think it'll still work just fine now that we got it all cleaned up. It worked before, to be honest with you. But now that we got this cleaned up, I'm just going to slide this back in. You can kind of see how that works. Makes a little more sense. At least it does to me now. Hopefully it does to you guys as well. So one thing worth pointing out here, I guess, if you didn't already have your battery totally removed from the bike like we do, you definitely want to be disconnecting your battery before you start messing around in here. Some big time shock's going to happen for you if you start touching all this stuff. But maybe you already knew that and you didn't need to be told. But anyway, so we've got our replacement cover here that's got the switch. This is a real simple part. It's just got a big plunger on here. Not even spring loaded or anything, because obviously this is what does all the work of the spring. So these are very, very simple. Got a gasket that came off there. I'm gonna kind of work this gasket into the channel on here. Actually didn't even have to do much, just popped right in. We can go ahead and get this thing put in place here. All right. Well, hopefully that's all it needs. Obviously, we're in no position to be test firing this bike right now, so we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens with that. But we'll make sure to give it a test before we get too far down the road on it. So I'm just gonna put the cover back on our starter motor here, and then we'll be ready to get this buttoned up. All right, let's get this buttoned up. First thing I want to do is I'm going to take a new O-ring. It's got some lube on it there. Slide that on. A little bit of Loctite on the threads here. And get our new clutch release cover put on. These can be a little bit of a pain to get the threads started on them, but hopefully this one won't be too bad. Well, I don't think I've ever got it on my first try before. I'll take it. All right. So I'm just going to snug that down. We'll tighten it with a wrench once we get it on the bike. So from here, sorry, this is a little hard to manipulate, get the clutch cable to spin. Just want you to be able to see what I'm doing here. Just got to put our guts back in here. So I got all the parts cleaned off. Take the bottom ramp, drop that in. I'm going to put a little bit of assembly lube in here because all these parts are dry. You could use whatever your transmission oil is too, but a little bit of assembly lube in there is not going to hurt anything. Then I'm going to take the 3 ball bearings, drop them in. Oop. I want to avoid dropping these things because they're hard to get. There we go. There we go. All right, I'm just going to put a little bit more assembly lube on top. And the outer ramp assembly, a little assembly lube on that. Like that. And this is ready to go in. Now, I'm going to just sort of put this in place. I'm going to have to manipulate it a little bit in order to get the ferrule on here. So you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing here. I'm going to try my best, though. I'm going to get this on the cable, and then I'm going to get this attached. It's a little hard to do for the camera. Outer ramp, ferrule. Use my gut to hold this all in place. Got that on the cable. Get that on, and now I'm going to drop that on. All right, cool. So if you're curious how this works, you got tension here from your clutch. You pull on this, it turns, it rides up the ramps on those balls and pushes the push rod, which pushes the clutch diaphragm spring, just like that. All right, so now just got to grab the retaining ring, and for what it's worth, this was installed this way. It's supposed to be installed this way. So we're gonna put it in correctly. Okay. Just make sure it's fully in the groove. It's not. There we go. All right, that's what we're looking for, just like that. All right, and then hopefully you'll be able to see, cable moves, this moves up, pushes push rod. All right, so that's basically that. Now all we gotta do is take our new gasket, put it in place, grab our new hardware, zip it all in. All right, so that all torqued down, just gonna snug up the clutch cable here. And we don't wanna go too tight on this. Just gotta get it to seal. Don't wanna be breaking any threads off. So that should be good, nice and snug. And just gonna take our dipstick and just put it back in here. So obviously there's no oil in here. What I like to do just as a reminder for myself is just leave this sticking out, just as a reminder that we don't have any fluids. I did the same thing on the oil up here. We know this bike is empty, but just good practice. But anyway, I think that is just about everything for this side. Obviously we got a bunch of oily fingerprints to wipe off of everything here, but just taking a step back here and looking, I think we got all the hardware we needed to get while we were over here. And I think we're pretty much wrapped up on this side, and we can continue with the handlebar installation. We'll move up, get the clutch cable connected, start working on the brake lines and everything else. All right, so let's go ahead and continue getting this buttoned up. So I'm gonna get the clutch cable connected up here. I should be able to get this in here without taking the clutch perch off, I think. This is just gonna slide in. There we go. Oop. Not quite. There we go. Okay. Then I just got a little keeper here, a teeny tiny little bolt. There we go. All right. So normally doing a little adjustment here, but we've got to disassemble the whole primary still, so we'll obviously adjust the clutch after that. But for the moment, this is just going to sit right here. And I think my next step is, since this is the only cable we're running through here and we don't have any wires, I'm going to get the headlight put back on, we'll get it plugged in, and then we'll get our wiring harness pulled back through. All right, that bolted on. Get it plugged in. Somewhere. There. All right. And then I'm not sure exactly how far we're gonna be able to pull this in. We won't really know till we get the tank back on. But presumably, something like that. We'll see. We can do that final adjustment once the tank is on, which I think we're pretty close to ready to do. I don't think we've got anything else that we need to worry about kind of up under here. Got all our hardware changed. Obviously, we'll be able to get to the spark plugs with the tank on. Got our carb in place. Got our original temporary throttle and idle cables back on while we wait for the others. We'll be able to change those, hopefully with the tank on anyway. But yeah, I think probably getting the tank back in place is probably the right move. So let's do that. All right, well, with that tank back on, hopefully you guys are seeing what I'm seeing, which is this bike is really starting to come together. I know it was looking good, you know, with all the new chrome parts and whatever, but it's hard to see the final product, particularly when it's got the wrong wheels on it, and all you're really looking at is kind of frame and motor. But now that we've got the front end put back together, we got the bars and risers on, and the tank, most importantly, back on, I'm really, for the first moment in this build, starting to see what this is gonna look like, and I'm really digging it. This bike is gonna be awesome. So we obviously got this all buttoned up. We've got a little more to do here. Well, we got a lot more to do in terms of this whole project. We got a little bit more to do in terms of ultimately swapping out these cables. We've got an upper brake line that we're gonna have to connect here when that comes in. Whole bunch of other little stuff in addition to some of the big stuff that's still coming. But I think we're gonna end it here for this video. I think we accomplished what we set out to do, which was getting all of these, getting all this hardware done, getting the bars and risers done, getting the front end done. I think that's like enough of a project for one installment in this little series. So I don't know what we called this one, maybe you know, bar, riser, front end install, something like that. But we've got a bunch more to do, and like I said at the end of the last video, we're gonna keep trying to break this one up a little bit so we can get the videos out quickly rather than making you guys wait, you know, a month or whatever to see the whole thing. I've got some stuff to do. I'll give you guys a preview, I guess, of what's to come, which is we've got an air cleaner to go on over here. We've got a whole bunch of work to do on the other side of the bike. That'll be the next bigger video, which is doing the chain drive, clutch, primary, all that hardware. We've got the wheels that are gonna come back, I think this weekend. We'll have them back here at the shop. We've got calipers to put on, rotors, all that stuff. So there's a whole bunch of work to do, kind of chassis driveline wise. Obviously we still have rear shocks to take care of. I'm kind of just thinking about this off the top of my head. Got some more ARP hardware to replace in a few places. But we're getting there. So we'll probably have a couple more short videos in this series, a couple more long ones, and then I think ultimately the final video, which my goal is to have this bike finished by Daytona. I don't know if the final video will be out before Bike Week or not, but the plan is to have it done for that. Not sure if Jeff is trying to go to Daytona with it or not. I hope he does. We'll be there. And by the way, if any of you guys are going to be at Daytona and you've gotten this far in the video and you want to come and say what's up, we'll be at all the performance shows the first half of the week, and we'll be at the dealership at Teddy Mosby, I don't know what the hell his name is, Daytona Harley, anytime we're not at a show. So come by and say what's up. But I guess that's it. It's enough kind of talking and rambling on about this bike. I'm just excited about it. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.